Welcome to This Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're here with us. Today, we're taking a super fast-paced, deep dive into what turned out to be one of the most wildly unpredictable tournaments in football history. We've been poring over the data to bring you the 25 craziest, most surprising statistics from the 2026 World Cup group stage. So buckle up, because what actually happened on the pitch pretty much rewrote the entire record book.
Now, let's just address the elephant in the room right away. Before a single ball was even kicked, this was the big question on everyone's mind. Did the 48-team expansion ruin the World Cup? There was this massive pre-tournament fear that adding more teams was just going to lead to a boring, one-sided tournament filled with absolute blowouts. Fans were genuinely worried the magic of the group stage would be completely diluted. So, did it?
Well, as it turns out, the data completely shatters that myth. The expansion worked brilliantly, and honestly, the exact opposite of what people feared is what actually occurred. The expanded format shattered the all-time attendance record set all the way back in 1994, and it produced the highest-scoring group stage we have ever seen. The so-called minnows proved incredibly competitive, totally new teams advanced to the knockouts, and the overall quality was just off the charts. Let's look exactly at who drove this incredible success.
Section 1. Debutante Miracles and Firsts. The underdogs take the stage.
Historically speaking, when a nation debuts at the World Cup, they kind of freeze up. Think about Zaire in 1974 or China in 2002. First-time teams often get shut out entirely. But in 2026, literally every single one of the 4 debutante nations found the back of the net. Curacao, Jordan, Uzbekistan, and Cape Verde all scored their first-ever World Cup goals. That is an unprecedented collective debut performance. Now, what's really fascinating here is how Cape Verde stacks up against the greatest debut campaigns of the last century. We all remember Italy winning it all in 1934, or Portugal and Croatia taking third place in 66 and 98. Well, Cape Verde basically just entered that elite pantheon. They went utterly unbeaten in a group containing former world champions, drawing with both Spain and Uruguay, plus Saudi Arabia. It's easily a top 5 debut tournament in football history.
And hey, let's definitely not overlook Curacao. They didn't just show up to make up the numbers. They methodically ticked off 4 massive historical firsts in a single group stage. First appearance, their first goal courtesy of Levano Comenencia, their first ever point in a draw against Ecuador, and with that draw, their first ever World Cup clean sheet. That is a textbook example of maximizing a debut.
But speaking of clean sheets, let this result really sink in for a second. Cape Verde, 0. Spain, 0. Spain, an absolute titan of global football, completely failed to score against a World Cup debutante. It is undeniably one of the most stunning defensive shocks of this entire tournament.
Section 2. Breaking century-old droughts. The weight of history finally lifted.
96 years. That is the agonizing amount of time it took for the United States to finally win its opening 2 matches of a World Cup. They literally hadn't achieved a start this good since the inaugural tournament back in 1930. After decades of stumbles right out of the gate, they finally broke a near-century drought.
And right behind them, with a 92-year wait, is Egypt. The Pharaohs made their debut way back in 1934. They appeared in 1990, 2018, and 2022 without a single victory. But in 2026, that excruciating wait finally came to an end. Egypt finally won a World Cup match.
And this brilliantly illustrates the spectacular evolution of Canada. In 1986, they had 0 goals. In 2022, they managed just 1. But in 2026, they exploded into an undisputed powerhouse. They recorded their biggest win ever with a 6-0 demolition, secured their first ever hat-trick thanks to Jonathan David, and broke through to the knockout stages for the very first time. Talk about a glow-up.
There was also this massive emotional redemption arc for DR Congo. Back in 1974, playing as Zaire, they lost all 3 matches and conceded 14 goals, basically becoming a symbol of World Cup disappointment. But decades later, they completely flipped the script, erasing that legacy by powerfully advancing past the group stage into the knockouts.
Section 3. Legends defying Father Time. The icons who refuse to fade. Just look at these 2 names. Lionel Messi at age 39, Cristiano Ronaldo at age 41. It is objectively mind-blowing that these 2 football titans are still out there, sharing the spotlight and producing decisive, game-changing moments on the biggest stage in the world while in their late 30s and early 40s. We have literally never seen longevity quite like this in World Cup history.
In fact, Messi didn't just play, he made history. At 39, he became one of the oldest players ever to score a World Cup hat-trick. And amazingly, it was actually his first ever World Cup hat-trick. Combine his age-defying masterclass with Canada's Jonathan David, who scored the only other group stage hat-trick, and those two feats alone equaled the entire hat-trick output of the entire 2022 tournament.
Section 4. Wild milestones and blowouts. The chaos of the group stage.
Let's talk speed for a second. Back in 2002, Turkey's Hakan Şükür set a seemingly unbreakable record by scoring in just 11 seconds. But in 2026, Paraguay's Matias Galarza delivered a lightning-fast strike of his own against Turkey, finding the net in a blistering 64 seconds. That makes it the second fastest goal ever recorded in nearly a century of World Cup football.
Now, while some records were totally challenged, some traditions simply refused to die. Germany defeated Curaçao 7-1, which remains the biggest win of the 2026 tournament so far. But what's really wild is that the scoreline perfectly echoes their legendary, completely traumatic dismantling of Brazil in the 2014 semifinal. It seems like whenever Germany scores 7, the whole world watches.
But hey, if you want pure, unfiltered chaos, you don't need to look any further than the opening match. Mexico versus South Africa produced an absolutely staggering 3 red cards. Opening matches are usually these tense, cautious affairs. To see this utter lack of discipline right at the starting whistle is incredibly rare, and honestly, it just set a wild tone for the weeks to come.
And there was just so much depth to this unpredictability. Let's rapid fire through the madness here. Ecuador stunned everyone by handing Germany their only defeat. Norway quietly became one of the few teams to go perfectly unbeaten with 3 straight wins. The Dutch showcased immense firepower, slamming in 10 group stage goals. Belgium recovered from a slow start with Egypt to obliterate New Zealand 5-1. Saudi Arabia proved they are the ultimate frustrators, drawing with Uruguay and Cape Verde. And Morocco stayed incredibly competitive by holding the mighty Brazil to a draw. The sheer breadth of the chaos across the board was just wonderful to watch.
Amidst all that chaos, we also hit a monumental mathematical milestone. When Japan secured their victory over Tunisia, the referee wasn't just blowing the whistle on 90 minutes. That whistle officially concluded the 1,000th FIFA World Cup match since the tournament first began in 1930. That is a truly historic moment to witness.
Section 5. History and the making. What we will remember. Let's synthesize the absolute peak historical anomalies that defined 2026. If you take away nothing else from this explainer, remember these 5 facts. Cape Verde pulling off an unbeatable debut against world champions. Lionel Messi scoring his first World Cup hat-trick at 39 years old. Germany reviving their 7-1 thrashing tradition. The unprecedented feat of all 4 debutant nations scoring a goal. And finally, the mathematically beautiful 1,000th World Cup match.
We have seen records broken, century-old droughts ended, and absolute legends who just refuse to quit. But as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this final thought. When we look back from the year 2050, which of these impossible 2026 moments will cement its legacy as the ultimate turning point in football history? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking the big questions.